everyone. I'm just making sure that all my phones are on silent. And yeah, hi. So normally you wouldn't want to do a business related YouTube live on a Saturday afternoon, but we're all kind of staying in a bit more. And with the situation of the coronavirus out there, all of the different kinds of advice and guidance we're being given, as a small business owner, you're either working on your business or you're worrying about it. So I want to come on today to try and help you think of how to frame the contingency planning for your business so that even when it feels like there are things that are out of your control, you can at least have an idea of what you can do on your business while maybe the economy works itself out, the governments around the world work out what their approaches are. And ultimately, when this is all over and the dust settles in whatever way that looks, how you can make sure that your business is kind of aware and ready for it. So I'm not going to assume any prior knowledge, so I am going to explain what I mean by contingency planning. So larger businesses, and if you've worked in corporations at all, you'll have heard of things like disaster recovery or business continuity. And these are terms that I think business owners can really use and understand, small business owners, but it doesn't tend to get spoken of. So disaster recovery is the term used where the building that you normally do business out of and all of your technology kind of explodes, right? So it's an absolute disaster. And the planning that goes behind that is everything's gone and I need to build up from scratch, right? Now, when you're a smaller business, that really is such a personal thing. You wouldn't necessarily do business planning for disaster because your business and your personal would just merge together. But following 9/11, there was a concept of business continuity. So I was working in large corporates at 9/11, and we had this strange example where we couldn't get into the building. They closed Canary Wharf in London. So, but all of the infrastructure was there, all of the technology, all of the information, but we couldn't get there. So we had to create this idea of business continuity, right? This idea of how do you keep doing business when the world is either inaccessible or you have to operate differently. Now, this is the one that I think small businesses can really learn from, because this isn't about building from scratch. This is about your circumstances have changed, but you still need to carry on to do business. So when I talk about contingency planning, I'm talking about the idea of your customers having to self-isolate, you having to self-isolate during this epidemic, the government coming out and saying that everybody has to be in lockdown, right? All of these things are environmental changes to the way that you currently do your business. So you need to have an idea of what you're going to do. Now, there's a general rule of thumb that says the work that you do now on business development won't actually make an impact for 6 to 9 months. So if right now you stop all activity with your business, you're effectively starting from scratch. So when you kick it back up, you're going to take 6 to 9 months to recover to similar standards, right? Now, that's more true with small businesses who don't have access to a huge coffer of investment money or backup capital, right? The larger companies can go into these lockdown phases because when they come back, their facility of being able to access money to go out and promote again is so much more. As a small business, you just can't do that. So your contingency planning has to be not necessarily about stopping business and restarting later, but actually how you carry on with your business in this environment. So I'm going to be talking really about 4 different things. The first thing is the things that you can't control. Now, they're the things that are going to make the life feel a little bit more anxious, and they're the things that at the moment a lot of people are focusing on, right? So that isn't necessarily a good place to start your business assessments, but we do have to acknowledge that they're there and potentially what you can do about them. The flip side is the stuff that you can control. So even within an uncontrollable environment, there are pieces that you can control, and I'm going to go through a few of those things as well. Then we're going to take a brief look at the disadvantages of being a small business in this environment, but also the advantages, right? I do see that there's a unique opportunity for small businesses here because the environment has changed, but actually as a small business, you're usually the ones that are most prepared and most able to respond to such significant changes. So we're going to have a look at that and hopefully give you some faith and hope that your business can get through and survive this and even thrive. I also, when I posted about the live on social media, I did ask for questions and I've got a few of those as well. But if you have any questions as I'm talking, feel free to put it in the chat. And then at the end, I'll have a look at all of the questions and give you as much of a response as I can. So the first thing is that element of what we're going through with Corona that we can't control, right? So the virus is obviously now, in the UK, they're talking about it being in the delay phase. What that means is that the virus is out there in the environment, and now it's just about trying to control and limit the spread and the rate of spread. So you'll see some countries have gone down a very kind of lockdown, strict route. The UK at the moment isn't doing that. They're trying other methods, and I don't need to tell you to look on social media for the amount of people who are saying whether that's a good or bad thing. For us as business owners, is what it is, right? So what the government is doing about this situation, you have to be mindful of it. You have to make sure you're up to date with what the correct things are, but you can't really influence it. And there's very little point trying to predict what's going on. The reason I say this is because if you've watched the last few weeks from the beginnings of the timing in China, this is a daily changing situation. Now, governments, because of their size and complexity, can't react as quickly. So they have to look through tons of analysis and tons of opinions to find the one that they want to pick. This means that when you're sitting thinking, well, what do I do as a business? You can't necessarily wait for them. So if you're thinking, oh, I need to know what the government's plan is in order to work out what to do in my business, I would suggest to rewind that. You definitely have to have in your mind, I need to be able to move and react in a good way to what the government comes out with. But right now, trying to predict what they all say, it's a waste of your energy. And it's more important to stick with the things that you can do something about. So listen to the government guidelines, listen to the advice as it comes through, but through the lens of how does this change the approach that I was already planning on taking. If we go into complete lockdown in the UK, it's better to already know how you're going to deal with that than simply worry about it, and most of the anxiety we feel is because we feel we're in a controllable situation, and we're not. There are aspects we can control. You just need to remember that, right? Secondly, you've got a customer base that is also running high anxiety, highly stressed, a lot of fear, right? So if you've listened to the news, you've got the government currently saying we're not going into lockdown, the schools are going to stay open, we're going to close some public events, but not all of them. Let's kind of carry on as normal and leave it to the individual. Now, the problem is when you're in that state of anxiety, because we can hear the scientists and the medical professionals telling us that this thing has potential to get out of control. As human beings, we're going to survival instinct. So no matter what the government are doing, your customers are going to react the way that they feel they need to. And so even if the government are telling you to stay open as a business, are your customers going to be there? Right now, what you will have noticed through social media is a number of the larger organisations have taken steps outside the government requirements. So a couple of my clients based in London have kind of already said, although we think the buildings that we're in are safe, although we're entrusting TfL in London to get you there safely in your commute, we appreciate that this is scary times, and if you're more comfortable staying at home, stay at home, right? So as a big business, they're already taking their own steps. And you can see a number of different places, restaurants, retailers, delivery stores, all those sorts of companies are trying to preempt. So that's something that you can pay attention to, right? You can say, okay, I know what the government are trying to do, but what's the best thing for me to do? And within the feeling of I can't force customers to act like normal, you can actually look at how they are acting in order to work out your adequate response, right? So even though you can't necessarily get people back into your shops or back into your businesses, you can at least explain to them how you're looking after that situation and how you're dealing with it. And that then shows them that as a business, you've kind of thought about this and you're not reacting to things, you're simply assessing the situation. So from a professionalism point of view, that's really powerful. And customers will realise that even though as a business you're taking potentially a significant economic hit, you're still thinking of them first. And that is huge in this environment. So it's definitely something to bear in mind. The third thing that as a business owner we tend to put on the extreme back burner is our own health, right? We are not immune to the virus. And just because we are self-employed and just because we're running a small business and we are the business, we can't afford to risk our own health in order to carry on business. I've known in some of the offices, you know, you look at it's like a meerkat, right? Everyone's sitting at their desk and then someone coughs or sneezes and everyone's on edge. You're not helping people if you're not looking after yourself. And sometimes that's just around the messaging, right? Being able to demonstrate that you are doing self-care is just as powerful, and it sends the message that you're caring about your customer base as well. There is no point turning up to meetings or talking to customers if you don't feel well, because even if it is not the coronavirus, if you look ill in today's environment, it doesn't look like you're fully assessing the situation. So definitely, if you're feeling rough, it's better to announce that somewhere, whether it's on your website, on social media, have a few days offline to just get yourself back into gear and come back. Now, when I said before about the 6 to 9 months lag for your business development, you have around 10 days. So if you go offline for about 10 days, your customer base will tend to remember that you're there. Longer than that, that's when they start forgetting. So the lockdown looks like if it happens, it's going to be longer than 2 weeks, in which case you have to put in places and steps now. If you feel ill, the majority of people who are getting the coronavirus, it's mild symptoms and it's like 7 days self-isolation before you even have to tell the NHS. So give yourself a few days to get over it. Don't try and push through it, because again, this is about that community support of everyone, and they'll appreciate you taking care of yourself more than carrying on regardless. So that kind of tips us nicely into the things that you can control, right? So you can't control what the government are going to do, you can't control what your customers are going to do, and you need to be able to think of yourself. So what will be with those things. The main thing from a business perspective is to keep looking at what's happening. keep informed with the news. I would suggest the news rather than social media, because some of the mood, shall we say, on the social media can take either the form of we're all worrying about nothing, or we're all going to, be impacted in a really significant way. So try to get detailed information from good sources, but try not to think of how your response has to be impacted by those. So what can you control? Well, the first thing from a purely practical side on your business is you need to control your spend, right? So if you can see that your customers and the demand and money coming into the business are actually going down, then you need to have a look at your expenditure. Now, this might mean looking at your monthly expenditure, so things that you pay monthly. So you might use particular software platforms. So, for example, if you use something like Calendly or Zoom for phone calls, they have a monthly subscription charge. So, and most of them will allow you to cancel for a while and then re-engage a few months later. So, if demand has gone down to the point where these tools aren't going to be needed or used as much, but you're going to be paying for them, then you should think about, okay, maybe taking a brief respite from these. You are going to have to give yourself and ask yourself some tough questions, right? It's really easy when we're growing a business. We can have a sense of, to be successful, to be a good business model, we have to have X, Y, Z, and they can seem to be mandatory expenditure points. Most things are not, right? If we think in terms of that contingency planning, what you're doing is you're effectively going down to the bare bones of what your business does. So if you drop Calendly, maybe you can do that because demand is so low that you can actually take individual email requests from people. So you no longer have to worry about the volume of conversations that you're having for this period. It might be that if you had call handling membership and retainer services, maybe you don't need those for this period of time. And obviously, other companies that are providing you service are also going through the same environment as you are. So don't be worried about speaking to them about potentially pausing your account, pausing your payments. I've noticed quite a number of businesses already starting to reach out to people saying, we'll do free delivery, or we'll waive this month's membership fee. So get a list of all the expenditure that you have on a monthly basis, particularly around just servicing your business. So if you provide a product, obviously you still need to get your materials in and that sort of thing. But things like your calendar management, call management, even your websites, right? You can even go down to a very basic website rather than have full hosting. So just try and think of all of the different expenditures you have. Try to think in terms of, do I really need it at this time? And if you don't, is the service provider able to pause so that you don't end up spending money that's not also coming in? You might also have to look at the promotions and marketing budget. So it's very tempting, and we all do it as small businesses, that as demand goes down, we'll be on social media, we'll get a prompt to do a sponsored ad or a promotional ad and think, well, nothing else is working, so maybe I should do that. I would suggest right now, the only time to really do that is if you are very, very sure that there is demand for it. The reason I say that is because, again, your customer base is looking at things slightly differently at the moment. They may very well be used to having ads scroll through, but are they going to be paying attention to ads right now? I got a really interesting question from Vananda on LinkedIn, where she was asking about how do you try to engage with customers and clients when it feels like some of the questions you might be asking are inappropriate, right? And not in terms of, trying to do a hard sell or anything like that, but actually, if you're trying to talk about business and somebody's had, either they've caught the virus themselves or they know someone who has, or something's happened and you're not sure whether it's appropriate to be talking about business, it can put you in a really confused place. So when you're trying to, that is in relation to the fact that your customers' viewpoints and priorities right now are changed and they're different to where they are. So it's absolutely fine if you change as well, right? So if you're going to be using ads, the ads that would work before won't work right now. And one of the more difficult things that you see on social media is the amount of people who have reframed their ad to reference the fears that have been brought up on the coronavirus. I do not think that that is a very good business strategy. As I said before, people want to see that businesses have a humanness, a humanity behind them. And if it feels like you're just manipulating a sales pitch with the word or the hashtag that they're going to click on, that feels a bit disingenuous. So I would definitely suggest not doing that. Also, the Facebook ads, the social media ads are going to be overrun with government ads and association and organisation ads trying to spread the message to social media about what the next steps are to handle the virus. So your advert right in the middle of that, you're going to have to spend a fortune to even get seen, and you're probably not within the right content. So the algorithm won't know how to handle you either. So for me, marketing budgets at the moment you can bring right the way down. The reason I think that is critical is because we have that panic of we need to do something. So if you need to do something, what does that something look like? For me, it's in using social media to really help establish your brand, right? So social media at its core is you in real time engaging with your customer base or your followers or your community, right? So every time you're on social media, it's an opportunity to build your brand. Right now, people aren't looking to be sold to. They're looking for businesses to really try to understand their concerns and be there, be part of the community. And that is huge from a brand perspective. I personally think there's a lot more power in somebody's, a business owner, being on social media saying, how can I help? How can my business help my community? This is how I'm going to try and do it as a business, but tell me, engage with me. Right? That is far more powerful than trying to think of another approach to sell what you do. That is about your brand, right? And we're going back to real key basics of really solid brand growth, because what we're talking about here is who you are, right? As a small business, you might be a team of one. Even if you have employees and a team, the chances are you're still in a situation where it's personalities creating the brand. Because of that, how you respond to the epidemic is actually not just about your personal response, it's about your business response. So really owning the fact that maybe you don't know what the right thing to do is. Maybe you're putting out a message saying, well, the government have guided us to this. This is how I'm going to handle it with my business. This is what I'm going to do. This allows your usual community to see what kind of person you are. And there's this saying, people don't buy from businesses, they buy from people. And this is a critical time to be able to show that. So whereas normally we're talking about memory hooks and sales pitches, actually right now your humanity is going to sell more about your brand. Don't be worried about saying that you're having to figure it out as you go along. The most successful brands who do really well on social media are the ones who have a really good personality behind them. And this is one of those times when we can use what's going on in the environment to demonstrate that behind that, the adverts, behind the website, behind the marketing, is a real person who started their business because they genuinely wanted to make a difference and make an impact to their community. And that can be huge. And that is something you can do right now for no money, just on your social media. What is it you want your customer base to know and to feel about your brand? That could be the key to you maintaining that communication with them, so that as the anxiety drops and people feel like they want to go out and start going back into businesses and shops and that sort of thing, the things that will connect with them is how you responded during this time. So use that. That is a very cost effective, because it's free, way of really looking after your brand and focusing on it as well. I've just seen a question here from Daniel. Hi Daniel, how do you manage customer expectations if you're anticipating disruption or delay to the service you offer? I think for me, it's all about transparency. You know, if somebody has an issue with a delay to your service right now, then they're not paying much attention to what's going on around them, right? This is a unique situation where there is almost no country in the world that does not have this issue to deal with. So whether your customer base is regional, national, or international, they should have this issue in the back of their mind when they're dealing with you. But don't assume knowledge, and don't assume that they see it and perceive it the same way that you do. So if you've been told to limit the business you do, or the footfall just isn't there, then being able to be transparent with that and saying, look, because of the situation, we have to go through these steps. This is in order to help the wider population, but it's also because we care about our customers, and just keep the conversation going. Now, that does take me to another point of what you can control, which is agility. You know, maybe the answer isn't to just communicate out that things are different, but actually use it as an opportunity to change the way that you work. So for example, I normally do face-to-face meetings, but it's perfectly feasible for me to do online ones. So being able to reach out to those customers and say, we can't do business the way we normally do, but we're thinking of an alternative. Or even just asking them, we are really all in this together, and we can't necessarily have all the answers now. So play on the fact that as a community, we are trying to support one another. And so maybe it's your customer base that will have a better idea of how they can interact with you. But don't be afraid to say that right now you're still trying to figure it out, because the governments are still trying to figure it out. So you might as well go with that as well. Mohammed is saying, when it comes to representing yourself, would it be imperative to put a face to your brand, as in video posts with your actual face? I would say if the brand that you are is service related, the face as your brand is pretty critical at this, normally as well, but at this stage very much so, right? Because people don't want to be reminded of institutions or organisations. They want to see a face that is someone that they can turn to, that they can trust, and it's that human interaction. Remember as well that if we carry on with the social distancing, there are going to be a lot of people who don't have social interaction as they do normally. So seeing your face, talking about how your business is going to support them through this time, could be absolutely key. We are in an unprecedented situation where we've got millions of people who are being told to not be together and keep themselves apart. but we have the technology that allows us to see one another and interact. So I would say absolutely use it. The key to using your face with your brand is knowing how you will effectively split those as you grow. So as a sideline to just talk about business growth for a minute, if you and your business become too emerged, as you try to grow, it becomes really difficult to not have to do everything yourself, right? So for example, if you were a trainer, a personal trainer, and your particular method was the one that everyone wanted to use, when you bring on another trainer, you may find that your customers still say, well, no, I want you, because you are the one that I've been attracted to. You're the one that I want to do business with, right? And that can stunt your growth. So when you're the face of the brand, the risk is that that becomes too close together. So always make it clear that you are the face of your business, but there is a business behind that. So for example, Leland Consultancy is my brand, my business, but I have a team who I look after, who I coordinate the way that they work. So the business does the work the way that I would want it done. That's the separation between the two. If you're thinking just in terms of just carrying on the conversation with your customer base, then your face is 100% the biggest thing that can help you keep that connection with them and keep them interested in your growth later on. So definitely. If you are looking at what to do in this time frame, right? Normally as a small business owner, you're quite busy all the time. And that can be quite tricky because now if demand goes down and you suddenly have free time, what's the best way to use that? Is it about continuing to try and get business right now? And that comes with its own risks, because if you're sending out the message that you want customers, but the customers aren't listening because they're in this weird mindset of they've got other things to worry about right now, then as a business owner, you will start getting anxious that they're not interested in your business anymore, and you start getting a little bit panicky that you're not going to get that business back, and you start watching your profit fall. That can be scary, and the more you focus on it, the more scary it will get. So my suggestion is if demand has gone down, if you find that you do have time on your hands, think about your business strategy, right? So what is your business about? Maybe do a year-long review. So say, what was the plan going into this year? Where did I want to be by the end of this year? Where am I now? And then start looking at that plan in relation to what could potentially happen in terms of the lockdowns, right? So if you've got a year-long plan and by the middle of the year you wanted to have a certain level of income or a certain level of customer base, how much you will then know, okay, so I was planning on this much increase per month. I've now got a couple of months potentially where we'll be in lockdown and then we'll be recovering from lockdown. So how does that shift that out? Does it shift it out by a huge amount? Are you looking to then try to do something, an advertising campaign at the end of the lockdown to really kind of push the fact that you want to get back on track? You can't amend a strategy if you don't have one in the first place. So use this time to create that structure of what you're planning to do. This will also help you offset the idea that you're having to react to everything. Simon Sinek wrote a book recently called The Infinite Game, and the infinite game theory is around the business, and the fact that when you start a business, you never win, right? There's never an end to a business. You may get to number one, you may get to a particular profit level, but there'll always be more for however long the business runs. that you will always have to have a plan for where it's going to go. Otherwise, it stagnates and then it starts reducing and dying off. So your strategy is really important to know where it is you're going, and so use this time to think about that. Use it also as a time to review where you are going. So just because at the beginning of January you thought, right, by the end of this year I want to be able to be here, it might be that because of this environment currently, because of things that you experience or see, it might really impact what you want to do with your business. You know, it could be that you started the year thinking, actually, my business is all about profit growth. I want to make as much money as possible and then exit, right? Perfectly solid, sound business strategy. However, you may go through this process and feel that there was something missing in that, that actually what you wanted to make was more of an impact on the world. So, you know, the money would have to be there, obviously, as a profitable business. You have to keep going. But you may decide that actually, for you personally, your business success is more determined by what you do rather than how much of it you do. So it's a good opportunity to just look at your strategy and think it through a bit more and try and make it as clear as possible. The plan is always to have a plan and then know how you can adapt it as things change. That's true when we're just going absolutely normally, but it's especially true at the moment during the pandemic. The other thing you can really look at is the way that you appear to your attitude, right? So if you are thinking scarcity, so if your fear of what's going on, you get into that scarcity mindset, you start making, I think, pretty poor choices in terms of where your business is going. So there are, while you know, there's plenty of inspirational leaders online who will tell you about, you know, the 4 a.m. wake up and make sure you meditate before you start work and all of that empowerment stuff. And that's really great. Not everyone can achieve that. And particularly when there's pressure outside your business environment, it's really difficult to, you know, does it feel appropriate for you at the moment to think about your business if something is happening at home or if you're seeing things around you? So it's not so easy to keep a positive mindset. And my own opinion here is really that sometimes it's better to just admit that you're feeling it at the moment and motivation is down. It can be quite freeing to be able to admit that you're not able to bounce out of bed and everything feel positive and optimistic. And in reality, like psychologically, by admitting that, you're more likely to be able to get over it. So I would definitely suggest using this time to reevaluate why you started your business. What was it going to achieve for you? What was it going to fulfill in terms of what you wanted to achieve? How does it relate to your self-identity? All of those things are really critical for having the energy and the motivation to keep going when things get a bit tough. So taking some time out to maybe do some self-development, do some self-reflection, not just on the personal development, but actually how that impacts the business. You know, we, particularly in the UK, our economy has not been doing great. We've been in a very turbulent time recently. Things have been tough. And for a lot of business owners, you will find that the epidemic and the strain that's putting on you is making you wonder whether it really is worth it still. Okay? Don't be ashamed or worried about admitting that. It is far, far better to talk to somebody or just talk it through with a friend or a colleague or a mentor or whoever to make sure that your mind's in the right place. because running a business is hard, right? It's mentally exhausting, it's physically exhausting. You have to know why you're doing it. And if you don't, it can be extremely difficult to find the energy to get going again. And while we're in this social isolation, potential lockdown, everything's kind of going quieter, you may find that it's at this point where you question why you've got the business in the first place. Don't be worried about that at all, right? Because it's far better that you have that conversation now, because as we come out of this and everybody else starts running and racing along again, what you don't want to find is you're faltering actually because you've forgotten why you started the business in the first place, and because of that you're struggling to get going again. So use this time constructively to really understand what it is you want to do with the business, and how it all fits together with your life, the world, and everything. Hopefully, I'm conscious that we've already done about 40 minutes and I don't want it to be too long on this. But I just wanted to do a couple of other things. So the disadvantages for a small business right now is that you don't have a huge amount of cash in the bank, right? You don't have a huge amount of capital. You may not have got the insurances and all of the cover and contingency funding that larger businesses have, right? So the big businesses are able to effectively shut down simply because when they come back up, they've got access to the funds to be able to get going again. They can also subsist, right? And small businesses, one of the biggest anxieties we have is that until the wheels really start turning and momentum picks up, you're usually relying on each month's money to get you to the next month. I would definitely suggest, alongside reassessing what expenditure you've got coming out, also don't be frightened to speak to your bank about potentially any cash flow issues you've got. It can be very tempting, and as business owners we get fairly well trained to tell everyone that our business is doing really well, we're a huge success, we're massively successful. Right now, if you need to be more honest about your situation, they will understand the environment that's going on. As long as they can see that you've thought of a way out of it, right? So if you talk to them and you say, I'm not making any money and I'm screwed, they're not going to be able to help you as much because they don't see someone kind of owning that situation. Whereas if you can say, the cash flow, because of the situation, the cash flow's gone down, I'm confident that I can get it back up in the next X amount of months, but right now I've got a cash flow issue. You're talking like a business owner. You're talking about someone who understands how to forecast forward, understand how to utilize the money in the best way, and you're more likely getting a positive conversation with them. So if you don't have access to funds, try to have a conversation with your bank to see whether there's anything that they can do. Avoid as much as possible living off higher credit interest things, credit cards, things like that. I know that for some people that literally becomes all that they can use, and if you absolutely have to, do it, it's about keeping going, right? But when we come out of this, what you don't want to see is any potential growth and any potential funds be sucked away by a load of interest that you have to pay because you maybe borrowed too much, took out too much, didn't really think through how much the interest would accrue. So if you're going to go into savings or go onto a credit card, make sure you can account for every penny, and if you can, understand where you will pay that back from later on as income starts coming up again. But remember, what we're trying to do is match demand with supply, right? We're trying to make sure that your business doesn't have to pay out more money than it's taking in. And when you're trying to scale up or scale down your business, it's really important to keep those two things in mind, right? As demand goes up, you will invest in different parts of your business. As demand goes down, you should be able to bring the expenditure down in the same way, so that on your balance sheet, you're bringing both down and up together. So if you're having to go into additional resources, just make sure you can know where every penny is going to, and make sure you've done that assessment of how much money you actually need to keep coming in each month. But there are advantages to being a small business right now. I know it doesn't feel like it, but there really is. One of the difficulties that bigger companies face is the lack of agility, right? If you imagine turning a huge retail company around or stopping a large service industry, it's a massive undertaking. And even if they make the decision straight away, it will still take lots and lots of time for them to finally actually close down. That's if you're stopping completely. If you have to try and move them to a different way of working, point them in a different direction, it's even worse for them, right? There's so much contingency planning going on because they are too big, and it's like turning around a juggernaut. As a small business, you are in a much better position to be able to react quickly and more effectively to the twists and turns on a daily basis, right? You can have a day where everyone's quite optimistic and you can shoot through with that. Then the next day when something happens, maybe it shakes the markets, maybe there's wide scale fear elsewhere, you can stop, and you stopping is far easier. I have thought for a while that just in general, our economy now is going to be primarily driven by small businesses, because life moves so much more quickly than big corporations can deal with. And this is one of those scenarios where that really gets proven, right? So the fact that you are small and that you haven't got a huge amount of outlays, and you haven't got lots of staff to worry about, is actually really working in your favour now. And it's an example of being able to take advantage of particular situations. One of the biggest stories that I like to say to my clients is, if you listen to the story of Warren Buffett, the billionaire investor. Now, if you read his history of how he amassed his wealth, huge proportions of his wealth was generated during economic downturns. Now, that's not him taking advantage of a situation, other than taking advantage of the fact that everybody else stopped playing. They stopped buying things. They restricted their growth because they lived in fear. I think if you have the ability to think that you can see a light at the end of the tunnel, then what you can do right now is think about, how can I make the most of this opportunity, right? It's not about trying to sell to people right now. Make that very clear. It's about creating that brand awareness, making sure that your local community is really aware that there's a local business that's ready to support them and be supported, showing the attitude that you have towards your customers, showing that personable face of your business. All of that helps you create this culture and this brand awareness for your business. And even when the big boys come back online and they spend a fortune promoting the hell out of whatever it is they sell, small businesses have done the legwork, they've done the hard work, and people want to be able to support you. What I've loved today is seeing on social media, various platforms, lots of encouragement for people to buy local, buy from local businesses, support local businesses, because we do understand that small business owners are our neighbours, our friends, our family. So you can use that and get quite a bit of hope, I think, and optimism that you have a support network around you that you may not even really recognise. the key is explaining to them how you're going to give back to them. So think in terms of generosity of your business. You know, what is it about your business that can really add to the local community? And all of that builds these connections that are not based on having the best marketing pitch, and they're not even based on having the best product. They're based on people getting to know you and wanting to support the work that you do. There's a lot to be said for people who do that groundwork and they'll bring a new product out. And I mean, this is a large business, I get it, but if you think of something like Apple very rarely talk about the product at the end. They talk about the experience of owning an Apple product, using an Apple product. And most of the people desire to be part of that community, and to be part of that community, they buy the product, right? And I would suggest looking at the TED Talk from Simon Sinek on Start With Why. It's a huge eye-opener for how powerful it is to have a core message and how people want to buy from people. And as a small business, you're perfectly positioned for that. And I guess the last thing before I get on to the questions is just around, you are part of the community, you do have connections with the local people in your area, and using those and making them see that as a business you're going to support the community however you can be almost more powerful than any marketing strategy that you go out and do there. You know, when you look at some of the offers that are happening around the country, around the globe, of businesses saying, look, we've got to change the way that we have. You know, you've got football stadiums who are giving food to homeless shelters because they're not going to use it during the football matches. Things like that really matter to people. You know, the coronavirus is a personal worry to people, right? It's going to affect them personally, and in ways that we haven't really experienced for an awfully long time, especially on a global scale. And they don't want to see businesses as businesses. They want to see them as people and part of the community. And if you do that now, if you focus on that, if you focus on what you can do right now, I'm 100% positive that as things improve and those customers go back out into the world, they will remember. They'll remember the work that you did when you weren't trying to sell to them. So there's a few questions that I had on social media. The first one I got was how to use time more efficiently. So as I said, during the last, oh my goodness, 50 odd minutes, using your time effectively is about doing something that makes it feel like you're achieving something. So focus on putting out the social media posts, focus on understanding the profit and loss within your business. What expenditure do you have? How much do you really need all of that? How does that plug into your business strategy? Any downtime where you're not still going out doing the work, not meeting with the customers, is work that you can do on your business. So there are now actually a number of online networking, even, talking to other workers, talking to other business owners about the same situations. We are connected even when we can't do face to face. But what you shouldn't do with your time is worry about those things that you can't control. There is no point panicking around, maybe I should do sponsored ads, or maybe I should go out onto social media and spend a lot of money trying to promote the thing. It's not going to be as effective as writing a really well thought out post or having a 5-second video that just connects you back with your audience and your customer base. It's not that, I think, is going to be a much better way of using your time. Bear in mind as well that we're all probably going to go a little bit what's the word, breezy, I guess is for the best word, when we finally can go out and see people and work with them and go back to what life felt like before all of this. And your business might actually get extremely busy straight after. So make sure that during the downtime you do some sensible process review. So when I do something, how do I do it? And if demand went up, how can I make sure that I can carry on? Uh, I've had some clients who have gone viral on social media and they don't really have time to gently and gradually build the business. Demand goes up really quickly, really fast. And that's a good time now when that hasn't happened, is a really good time for you to actually put in place things of what will I do when I am that much busier. It might still feel a little bit unreal to you, but I swear you'll really appreciate it when the success does come. I also got a question around the £3,000 grant mentioned in the budget in 2020. So slightly more practical question. So in the UK, we had the Chancellor of the Exchequer talking about several measures to help businesses during the coronavirus pandemic. One of them was a £3,000 one-off grant provided to businesses under certain conditions. So the £3,000 one-off grant is available to businesses who pay no or little small business, business rates. So there is something you will have heard of called small business rate relief. If you don't know what that is, I would just check in with your accountant, because they will know if you have had that applied to your tax affairs and so on. If you do have small business rate relief, then there's a £3,000 grant that you can get access to. What they've said at the moment is that's going to be accessed via local authorities. So it's not going to be a government run incentive. They're going to give the funds to local authorities who are going to do it. My experience of when that happens is that there is somewhat of a delay. So while I do think it's worth checking your local authority, seeing if they've already got something on their website or in their information about how they're going to do that, but I would also say chances are it's going to take them a week or so at least to get an idea of what that looks like, factoring also that the council offices and the local authority offices will be experiencing the same problems of lockdown and social distancing. So I wouldn't hammer them on the door Monday morning, but definitely keep up to date, know how to contact your local authority, know whether they've got any social media accounts or anything like that, but they're the ones who are going to be doing that grant. There is also a grant for people with rates, and I'll put the link to the government website information, because there's all sorts of conditions around how much rates you're paying, where you are, and it's a lot more complicated. But if you're a small business, not paying business rates under the small business rate relief, you can have access to that money, but don't think that it's going to come quickly. It's going through local authorities, so it might slow it down. The last question I had via social media is, and I mentioned it before, Fernanda asked me on LinkedIn around this idea of how do you carry on doing business when business seems to be the last thing on anyone's mind. And there is no real easy answer to this. I think it is a question of trusting that as a human being with compassion and empathy, you will know the right way to approach people. So if, for example, if you are trying to chase customers for information, or you're chasing clients for updates on where they are with whether they're going to hire you or not, you may feel it's really difficult to have a business conversation because this is such a kind of unusual environment. My suggestion would be, as a business, create an approach to that. So if those conversations still have to happen right now, I would put in place like a preface. So either on the phone call or in an email, actually have a note at the beginning of the conversation that says, we're trying our best to maintain business as usual. This means we've taken the decision to continue to do business during this time. However, we completely understand if you're not in a similar situation, and I hope you will appreciate that we have no issue with you telling us that now is not the time. If you say something, if you have it prepared, then you're not picking up the phone and not knowing what response you'll get. Like, the worst thing in the world is being on the phone, getting yourself psyched up to do a phone call, and then for their response to not be the one that you're expecting. But then many times, and that really puts you on the back foot. If you understand that potentially there will be people that you speak to who maybe don't want to talk about business right now, then by having that little intro, it means that you're giving them permission to just say not now, right? They don't have to think about it. They don't have to maybe stumble into an awkward kind of rudeness, which is where most people have the issue of, oh, this is, a conversation that feels really awful. By saying, I'm phoning up because we've taken the decision that we want to try and keep things as normal as possible, but totally understand if this isn't the right time for you. That helps not only the person at the other end of the line, but also your employee has like a process to follow, and that can give them a lot of calmness and a little bit more comfort that they're not necessarily going to stumble into saying the wrong thing. And I think we do have to remember that we're all human. We're going to get things right and we're going to get things wrong. And it's really about remembering that you are a human being, your customer who you're phoning is a human being, and we're all going through something on a global scale that almost every human in the world is going to have some form of an impact on. So we're doing always the best that we can, and remembering that can just make you feel like it isn't going to kill your business by just saying the wrong thing. So we've just gone over the hour. Thank you so much. I've seen the participation go up and down and all sorts, but it's stayed relatively regular. So I'm assuming that quite a few of you have actually hung around for an hour of me talking, which is amazing because I don't normally have people listening to me for that long. If you have any other questions, I will, if I get enough, I'll just come on and do another YouTube live. If you have any specific questions about your business, then feel free to email me, contact me through YouTube, or contact me through Instagram or Twitter. My Instagram handle is leelam.insta. My Twitter is leelamconsult. My email address, if you really want it, is lee.lam@leelam.co.uk, because I can't say my name too many times. And yeah, my business is to support small businesses, and what I've seen in the recent weeks has just been a lot of small businesses with a lot of information being thrown at them and not really knowing the right thing to do or who to talk to. And while I'm in lockdown as well, while all of us are kind of stuck on remote working, I thought this was a really good opportunity for me to come out and reach out and say, I'm here if you need me. We can get through this together. And actually, as small businesses, you're in a really good position to really solidify what your business is about. And it might actually be the start of something potentially really special for your business. So thanks everyone for joining, and hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.